When you first started driving a car, did you ever notice that that car seemed to be everywhere else that you would drive? But right before, you didn't quite notice it as much. And perhaps if this example doesn't quite hit you at home, still the same idea. Has there ever been that thing that you started to be somewhat fascinated by or that somewhat caught your attention, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're seeing it everywhere? And aside from targeted ads with Facebook pixels and all the other forms of marketing, seriously, that kind of divine intervention feeling where it's like not quite deja vu, but I was looking for exactly this. Or maybe I wasn't exactly looking for it, but that's all that you were focused on and that's all you kept seeing. This is your reticular activating system at work. Some others will call it the power of manifestation, right? The calling forth of what you want to see, the point of affirmations and visualizations, if you will, because this is our human filtering system of sorts. Because our brain, there's a lot of information that's coming in every single moment to moment, trillions of bits of information. Our minds can't filter through all of that and process it. It's way too much. I think we can all understand sometimes overstimulation is a real thing. So being able to filter it, we can only filter through hundreds of thousands of bits compared to the trillions. And so from there, if that being the case, what are we filtering for? Where's our focus going? As the old saying goes, where focus goes, energy flows. And so where does your energy go? What are you manifesting in your day-to-day? What do you have on your vision board? And how are you updating your internal operating system? This is everything we're going to cover when it comes to optimizing your brain. Welcome to today's Gen Ed class. When I was growing up, there was at some point a book that I ended up stumbling upon. I'm not really quite sure how, but I was really intrigued by it because the name of the book was The Secret. Now, some of you may have actually read this before, and if you haven't, I sincerely encourage that you do, because it does hold some pretty important information that I highly encourage you to take for yourself, as I have for myself, as many others credit as having taken in their own ways, whether they realize it or not, because it's one of those types of truths that if you read the book, you will then know. But there are a lot of people who haven't read the book, but do exactly as it talks about, because there are these just nuggets, this just no way around it. If you, as the saying goes, focus on this, your energy will go towards this. What you appreciate appreciates. And so with it, this is where we start to have the power of manifestation. Now, I'm a big fan of the spiritual, the energetics, the woo-woos, if you will, because I do believe that innately it's just what we are. We're energetic, emotional, social creatures. And so aside from that, though, to try and give it a more concrete view, I love to, as we understand this, speak on it in the terms of our reticular activating system, or RAS, your RAS or RAS, however you want to go ahead and call it, but basically it's your internal filtering system. We're not computers, so I don't think it's fair to say much like a computer, but for lack of a better analogy or comparison, much like a computer, we have our own internal operating systems. We just happen to also have two of them, and they can sometimes compete for attention. The old archaic one, our lizard brain, if you will, right? The limbic system, and just these parts of our brains that aren't conscious, and with that will simply put us into, like sometimes our nervous system will just override, and we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So being able to then understand where are we focusing? But the point in the focus is how can we take advantage of what is conscious when we are in control? Because it's really hard not to. That comes into discipline and a whole different segment. Because then it's not just affirmations, it's not just visualization. Then it comes to the action, it comes to discipline, it comes to work. Because that's the also very much reality to this case scenario. You can go ahead and do all your affirmations, change your energy state, do all of the wonderful practices. But if you're not legitimately putting in the work to drive the results, there's only so much that your visualizations, your affirmations, your optimization of brain will do for you. Because of course, optimizing your brain is important, but of course, using the brain so it actually produces something is the most important. There's a lot of people that read books, but what use do you put towards the books, right? You can have a lot of knowledge, but knowledge doesn't guarantee anything. There's a lot of smart people in the world, but that doesn't guarantee success. And so within this, how do we find success? Well, one of the things that I always want to encourage when it comes to trusting yourself and succeeding in the modern age is that we must focus on exactly what it is that we want to get towards. And if you're sitting there and you're just like, I'm not even sure what I want, exactly what I want to get towards, to go towards, to find progress in, that's okay. The most important thing is that you have a direction. I mean, just imagine if you were a pirate sailing on the 7 seas, looking for booty or bounty or whatever, gold, treasures. It's not really going to make any sense for you to just go willy-nilly anywhere. It would make sense to at least grab a bad map versus no map. At least head in a direction, right? Because then you can take that really crappy map and walk over to the locals at the next town over and be like, hey, I'm looking for some treasure. I have this map. What do you think about it? Have you heard anything? Does this have any resemblance or familiarity to you? Is this map even accurate? Like, do I have a good map? I have a bunch of people check it and then go from consensus, if especially you have no map to begin with. Because what's better than no map is a map. And then a good map will be better than a map, right? Or a better map. So this is really where the foundation to optimizing our brain comes from. With optimizing our brain, our reticular activating system, to search for what we want. In the same way, if you're driving down the street, try this practice. You don't want red lights, but are you in the car the entire time going, I don't want a red light, no red light, no red light, no red light. Oh my goodness, please, no red light, no red light. I need to get there, no red light, I need to get there, no red light. Yeah, you're going to start perhaps, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there's just this immediate divine intervention that, yeah, you get nailed with red lights. No, I mean, just the reality is that you're going to start to subconsciously seek these scenarios, right? You might end up putting yourself in a position where being late is going to be a bigger deal. And so that 1 red light, that 2 red light, that 3 red light starts to feel very big because you're much more sensitive to it, because you're innately searching for it. Because then that's all you're actually focusing on. And it's not just that red light, it's the other red lights in your life. Because the thing is, if you just go, no red lights, you're going to get them because your mind does not understand the negative. Okay, humans have done a good job of being able to rationalize so far that we can understand that there is a negative, right? -1, -2, -3. After the 0, that it's not just positive numbers. So that being the case scenario, when you are getting into the negatives, we can do it conceptually, but our minds, our operating systems don't realistically operate like that. For example, right now, don't think about an elephant. Did you think about an elephant? You might have. I mean, what else would you really have thought of? When I say don't think an elephant, you go, oh, okay, jaguar. No, like it's not an immediately rational thing for our mind to do because it doesn't make sense to think in the negatives. Why would you when there's just reality to contend with? And so not to say that on a mathematical in the physics realm we'll have negatives and this is where we get a little too far deep. But again, keeping this on the aspect of what are you focusing on? If you just keep thinking about what you don't want to go wrong, are you not still spending time, energy, and perhaps over enough time, money, focusing on the wrong thing, right? What I don't want this to go wrong, but you're focusing on what goes wrong versus just shifting everything into the glass half full, positive abundance mind frame. And so then this is where affirmations and visualizations really come in as a wonderful tool, so that you use this to prime your system every day, right? It's not necessarily that you have to go into a peak energy state every single moment to get something done, but it's having that clear recognition of self that this is the direction that I need to be going, and this is what I'm focusing on, and I'm keeping it in a glass half full, great attitude type of moment, type of perspective, type of way of life. Because I can guarantee you, nothing great is going to come from anything less but a great attitude. And so in the same way, for example, on a more financial place, if you want to be a millionaire, a billionaire, whatever the case scenario of the income that you want to earn or the success that you want to have in a personal and professional manner, you have to look at it, decide on it, and then focus entirely on whatever that goal may be. Because then your mind subconsciously works in the background. Look, we're not conscious all 24 hours of the day. For sure, that however much time that you go to sleep, but definitely throughout the day, none of us are actually conscious the whole time. There's autopilot, and then there's the conscious time where we're actually doing something new. So if that be the case, all that autopilot time, what is our body and our mind immediately programmed in autopilot to search for? And that's what these habits like visualizations and affirmations and modeling the success and acting as if comes from. Because ultimately, what is the difference between you and a homeless person? Unless you're watching this and you're homeless, then you may not understand this already. And otherwise, you and someone far more successful, right? Or the best version of you that possibly exists. Well, it's really just going to be the quality of the decisions and the habits that we take on. And from that, it's all going to stem from the vision, from the direction that we have, the belief that we have of what we are supposed to be doing and the direction we're supposed to be heading. And that's what the reticular activating system primes us for. So where it's not these things don't turn into questions, not a, could I do this? Should I do this? And it's not even a, oh, I must do this. It's a, I didn't even realize I did that because that's just what I had to do. That's what it was meant to be. And this tends to tie into whether or not you're a believer of the right thing always happens, right? Because if you are focusing on what you want to happen, the right thing is always going to happen. Whether or not you believe it's the right thing, that's not your call. But I can guarantee you the right thing will always happen. Are you looking for the right thing? Are you priming your mind on a day-to-day basis to look for the right thing? Are you surrounding yourself with people that will reinforce the optimization of your brain? Because for your brain to be optimized, treat it the same way we're talking. Like a computer, you do an update, right? It takes a little bit of time, right? There's going to be a 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, hour-long update, refresh. But aren't you happy that it works? Wouldn't you want it if yours worked? So fine-tune your brain, optimize your brain through just not only these practices, but through the legitimate changing of a negative or pessimistic lens into a positive. Because if you had to choose, do you really want to have to take a negative look? No, and it might feel really uncomfortable to change it into a positive look. But do you really want the other option? And if you're sitting there and saying yes, then I'm sorry, you just have a comfort zone built around that familiarity of your suffering. And I'm sorry that you are comfortable in your suffering. Enjoy the loathing. But otherwise, re-optimize. One thing is words, writing things down in paragraphs, clear demand statements, command statements, I am statements. And then there's the pictures, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. So create a vision board. and pin it up and look at it every single day. Optimize your brain. You know, there's a story of Jim Carrey when he was coming up in the show business, living out there in California, and he would go out 2 different occasions, one towards the pier or towards the ocean, and just sit there in the car and look out and imagining and playing out the visualizations in his head of the success that he foresaw. And then the other being a check that he wrote to himself. And on the check was for $1 million in the memo line for acting services rendered. And he put it on with a date being sometime in November of one of the years that I forget. And from there, he ended up, over the course of time, he pinned it on his ceiling. So every day when he woke up, he was looking at the ceiling and he looked at that to remind him. And then a few months before the date he had written down, he ended up getting a check for over $1 million for acting services rendered for his role in Dumb and Dumber. Look, whether you fully believe in the woo-woos, I don't care. But I think we can both agree that it's but of nothing a net positive to you to surround yourself with life signage, the things that remind you of what you're supposed to be doing and why you're supposed to be doing it, so that you keep the highest expectations for yourselves, that you push to the highest capability that you have, and optimize your brain to tackle this, to tackle what you want, and trust yourself to succeed in the modern age. If you find value in this episode, do make sure to put your takeaways down into the comments below. You can, of course, reach out and you can engage with us on our other socials. You can find it in the descriptions below. And of course, if you find value in this, go ahead, hit the share button so that you can share it to your other friends on your socials. Hit the subscription button, the notification bell, so that you get a notification every time we drop a new episode. And from there, we'll go ahead and see you in your next Gen Ed class.